All right, so in this video, I'm going to review quiz 2, and it's very similar to the first quiz. Same kind of format. There's going to be 14 items that are worth half a point each. So that means there's going to be worth 7 points total for the true-false items. So I would say if there's one that you're not too sure of, I wouldn't get too hung up with it. Maybe you can make a guess and come back to it. Because there's going to be more point value in the matching items. There's going to be 2 matching items that are worth 2 points total for a total of 4 points of the full credit for the quiz. And there's also going to be 4 short answer items that are worth 10 points total. So that makes up half the points just in the short answer items that are later on in the quiz. So some things that are important to be aware of are sampling. So just kind of broadly being aware of some terms such as sampling error and representative sample. So if we're trying to have the best quality study that we can have, we want to try to eliminate sampling error and try to create as representative a sample as possible. And it's also a good idea to have a general understanding of different sampling methods, and just to know that the sample quality isn't necessarily solely determined by the sampling method itself. Some other things to know about are threats to validity, and in this chunk of the course, we discussed quite a bit about validity and reliability. So some threats to the validity of your study are maturation. So again, maturation is basically that the participant gets better just because of time passing. So there's a few different ways to address maturation talked about in the course. You can certainly look at cross-sectional designs or cohort designs. Also, it's a good idea to be aware of the Hawthorne effect, which is basically just people are improving just because they have become aware that they're being monitored or that their behaviors are being watched. In order to address some threats to validity, randomization is another important concept to be aware of. So the difference between a quasi-experiment versus a true experiment, the key factor here is randomization to one group or the other, and not just convenience sampling. And a couple other really important things to take away here is that correlation does not equal causation. So just because there's a strong relationship between 2 variables doesn't necessarily mean that one has caused the other. Another concept related to that idea is spuriousness. So in one of the discussion questions, I talked about the relationship between ice cream sales and polio. So I might encourage you to watch the video that I posted on Freakonomics and that relationship. And I'll just kind of give you like a broad idea of one of the short answers is I'm going to be discussing a study design. And based on that, I'd like for you to be able to apply 2 possible threats to the internal validity of the study that I've posted. Okay, so some other ideas for research design that you should be aware of are comparison group versus a control group. So in a comparison group, the subjects would get some other form of the treatment or like an alternate treatment. So if we're looking at a smoking cessation group, maybe one gets Chantix or nicotine gum, and another group might get something else, like a comparison group might get hypnotherapy for smoking cessation. But they're both getting a treatment. It's just an alternate form of a treatment, versus a control group might get no treatment at all. And also to be aware of the difference between quasi-experiment and a true experiment. Again, the key factor here is randomization. Another thing that we talked about in this section is single system design. So you don't necessarily need to know everything about single system design. And really here, there's just kind of one section of the quiz that's devoted to it. But if you take 793 with me, we'll learn more about it then. But basically in single system design, there's the different phases. A is baseline, B is an intervention, C might be another intervention. So just that you're aware of kind of the breakdown of how single system designs are reported. And again, the x-axis would be passing a time versus the y-axis would be the frequency of your operationally defined problem. Okay, and also kind of getting back to reliability and validity here. So it's a good idea to be aware of both what validity and reliability are. Validity being the accuracy of a measurement versus reliability being more of the consistency of the measurement. So there's a couple different types of validity: content validity, construct validity, criterion validity. I would say that it's probably most important to know content and construct for the purposes of this quiz. And also for reliability, just kind of having a general idea of internal consistency, which is generally denoted by coefficient alpha, inter-rater reliability, and alternate forms reliability. So inter-rater reliability would be two different assessors rating the same variable, versus alternate forms reliability is two different tools for measuring the same construct. And just for the definitions, there's going to be a list of definitions similar to quiz 1, and I'd like for you to define 2 of the terms that are in the list. Obviously, I can't tell you what those terms are, but it's just a good idea to have your textbook open just in case you need to flip through to find the definitions. And there's also one question related to an article from the discussion forum. So if you've even skimmed through the discussion forums for this section, you should easily be able to locate the answer for the question that's on the quiz.